Okay, we're back, and you can see I'm starting to add some darker tones. Let me just pull a little closer. I started adding that one darker mixture that I have. And again, I don't want you to use black. I want you to make, or just use brown. I mean, part of this assignment is really to start seeing some of the other colors that we often just go, oh, it's green or it's brown. Tree barks are brown. Not always. There's a lot of different colors to find in those muted tones, and that's hopefully what that complementary palette assignment gave to you, is a little bit of that seeing that. So I'm going to try to set this back the way that I had it. And I'm going to just paint a little bit further, adding more of these darker tones. Since I have these the mid-tones, the purple and green down, I just have this one darker value that I mixed a blue and a brown and an ochre together to get kind of a darker muted tone. And now I'm just going back in and really accentuating where I see the light the strongest. It's an overcast day, so we don't have real highlights, real brights, but what overcast often does is it shows us colors that we don't normally see because it gets so bright out. We're seeing a certain reflection of color, so it's a good day for observation. And you can see I'm just going to try to get a little bit more of this texture by drawing in. And what I love about this underpainting is the orange pokes through as I draw in, but some of that purple will remain. And then I'm going to go in with a lighter value, a whitish kind of lavender, maybe even a little cooler, on the cooler side of like a bluish white, and kind of pull up some of the highlights of that bark as well. And I'll probably go in, and there's some orangish tones in the under part of the bark that are really dark orange that I'll probably kind of intensify my orange underpainting a bit. But you can see I'm getting a chance to build up textures of that tree and that bark, and they kind of pop out from that orange. But I'm going to like not leave that underpainting. You're not doing just a tree. The idea is you're going to be painting that whole thing. So now I'll kind of come back with my purple tone again and start kind of laying out maybe what that fence would look like and where it's going to be situated. There's a little bush over there blocking it. And again, I'm going to separate it a little bit from my tree for now, just so that I don't get the forms confused. But I do want to establish my composition and kind of commit myself instead of getting too wrapped up into the tree too soon. Again, this should be no more than like a total of 5 hours should be spent on this painting. You want to make it rather kind of hold some of that immediacy. But in that 5 hours, you're not going to be making just a painting of one object, a plant. You're going to be painting the entire background and everything that you see in your image. And if that's, if you're in your house and you're painting some plants, then paint a couple of plants, but you're going to be painting the wall or part of the garden that you're around, something. And otherwise, just get out to a park and make a day out of it, and do it all in one day. And that's why that 5-hour stint would be good, because it'll give you a chance to figure out how you're going to attack everything. Now, this is a good area for me to be in because the leaves are starting to interrupt, and often we get so, oh, I can't touch those leaves, especially if it's acrylic. It'll be dry by now, so it'll be no problem. But because it's not acrylic and oils, I don't want you to have to sit there and go, well, I have to wait for it to dry. No, that's the point of this assignment, is not having that chance to let it dry, but also working really thick. So that presents certain problems in the ways that a lot of us normally think about how to go about resolving issues when things are wet. That's not what I think is the best decision. I actually think wet on wet is some of the more charming things. So I'm going to go into this and make sure that my fence lines up with my leaves. And you'll see that some of the leaf marks will get splashed into my purple and vice versa. But you just want to try to be as careful as possible as you do it, and not have too many expectations. Don't be afraid to let some of the spaces in between the leaves get a little bigger. If I don't like that, I go back in with my green and I kind of readdress it, you know. I just lay it back on there. I'm going to get some more dark values for that green area there because I have some leaves. I want to show some of those shadows in there as well. Getting gloopy. When I always say when I get too gloopy in an area, move around. You might come back to it, and that gloopy area will be might be very helpful. So even though you're seeing me only have kind of 3 mixtures, that's not the limitation. This is just kind of a starting point. That's kind of say build up your whole composition with just these 3 kind of 2 midtones and 1 darker tone. Have the brighter tone there as your background, and then as you start building it up, you're going to start adjusting highlights in different areas. Yes, get purple mixture. Let's see. A little cool thing about those straight lines in the fence, you know, you have a straight line here. You can use a palette knife and just get that edge lined up, and then if you lay it down right, you get some nice straight lines. Don't look for them, don't try to illustrate them to be all uniform and all super dark. That's not how we see the pattern of those boards over there. We see them very different, each one. Certain areas will be darker, and then if you get it too thick, you come back with your purple, and you just kind of lay this back on there at the top of it. So don't be thinking about everything as that one application, even though it's thick. You're just gonna be coming back into these forms. And you know, I'll do a little bit of the spider plant back there as well, just so that you can see another form created with the palette knife. Just these kind of short dashes for the spider plant, but it makes it, because these marks kind of push it down on the palette knife in a certain way where you're not seeing them so clearly. You're going to have to kind of keep dipping back into your palette knife, onto your palette. The key for palette knife paintings is have a large mixture, a large pile of paint to continuously keep pulling off of. That'll be the trick. So you can see I'm kind of getting this weird spider plant texture, and this is the start of it. You can see that little spider plant back there. I guess that's what it's called. That's how I always called them. And then I can come back and scrape into this as well. Maybe accentuate that shape even better. So remember, like, that first application is not it. It's also about taking away paint once you've laid it down so thickly. Thickly. Is that a term? I don't know. All right, so this is going to be what our 2 demos for this painting, this landscape study, and what we're going to be doing. I call it landscape study, but you know, again, if you're indoors, if you don't have access to a yard, I really recommend going somewhere outdoors and trying to do this. I think it's just going to be overcast down in Davis for the next few days. I know some of you all aren't necessarily in Davis, but just try to get outdoors to do it, which means it's some organization. You kind of make sure you have everything you need, have it there accessible. Even if you're not going to use Turpenoid for your thing or your brushes, bring them anyway, just in case you need something that you forget. Oh, my palette knife was with my brushes. Those types of things are very important. And then, just make sure you're kind of following the steps of this assignment. Go through that process and spend, again, no more than like 5 to 6 hours on this painting. That means you really want to cover the base of it first before you start dealing with highlights. Do more than what you see that I've accomplished. You should get that entire background, the foreground, all of it developed just with those 3 kind of colors, and then go back and adjust the different areas if you have the time to do that. Otherwise, this is going to be kind of like a one-day study is the way that we're thinking of it, and one day meaning a 5 to 6 hour period. And then for our other landscape study, it's going to be a much more involved process. I'm just going to be showing you images of past students' works where they do an underpainting of complementary colors, and that would be that, the green grass behind me would be painted red. And then after we paint it red and it dries, and we've got a full painting that's totally complementary colors with green leaves and green grass and orange skies and yellowish, dark yellow trees because of the kind of purplish tones that we might see in the bark. Once we have those underpaintings, then we'll go back with those colors of greens and purples and browns and blues for the sky and whatnot to kind of develop them. But we'll probably end up using some of those complementary colors underneath to inform the shadows or the highlights of some of those types of textures and surfaces that the light's capturing. So that painting is going to be a much longer study. It's going to go into all of next week pretty much. So this is going to be our kind of like today, get your stuff together to do this and paint on this today. I'm assuming that people probably won't complete it all, won't want to do their 5-hour stint today, but if that's the case, then that's what you're doing for homework. The other project that you're doing for homework is just really scoping out where you're going to paint and what you're going to paint as a more involved underpainting. That can be done from your window, and I'm gonna write about that in the longer assignment when I'm showing student work and talking about painting your landscape from a window and including the window and the windowsill or the curtains or any type of interior that show any part of the composition that would show the interior that you're sitting in looking outside, and that's another way of going about this. So just kind of keep an eye on the modules and try to look at this video more than once if you need it. Other than that, I hope this was very helpful, and I will be looking for emails or any questions over the weekend that people might have.